Yo, what up, Street Talks? Eric Kim. All right, the turbo thought of the morning. So, the thought is ignorance takes courage. So, you think about the whole like Fahrenheit 451, Big Brother 1984 vibes, Brave New World. It's like, you know, ignorance is courage and stuff like that. And in modern times, to be ignorant is seen as backwards and also seen as abominable. Um, and why is that? So first and foremost, what does ignorant mean? Ignorant means to not know. Not. Nasce, nascere in Latin means to know. So temet nascere or whatever means to know thyself. It's also in the scene of Matrix when Keanu Reeves is like visiting the kid who bends the spoon, the oracle, for the first time. Also, my personal code of ethics is to me, one of the most interesting things is to have experimental ethics about life. So, one of them I've been experimenting with, which I actually think is a good one, is whenever it comes to others or the happenings or the dwellings of others, even whether good or bad, it is actually best to remain ignorant of other people rather than to always care about other people, which traditional Judeo-Christian morality tells us. So, for example, whenever there's some sort of like bad news or gossip or even good news about other people, um, I strive to remain silent rather than just fanning the flame. And so, why is this a good idea? So, first and foremost, it prevents you from judging other people as degenerate or, you know, unwise or whatever. And like, it's interesting because, you think about the silver rule from Nassim Taleb and many others. Don't do unto others as you don't want others to do unto you. So, for example, I don't really like it when people judge me for my actions or my activities. So similarly, I shouldn't judge other people. But the problem is, if somebody does something or I overhear somebody do something that's against what I personally believe in, of course it annoys me, and I do the micro judging. So out of sight, out of mind. To remain ignorant of it is better. Similarly speaking, to remain ignorant of the news or what's happening, actually I think takes far more courage than to always know exactly what's quote quote going on, because the two problems: one, 99.9% of the news is all noise, and secondly, there's a financial incentive for news corporations to keep you glued to the screen or to their websites, so that's also not good. And third, much of the news actually doesn't really pertain to you. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So when COVID first hit and stuff like that, honestly, I personally wasn't too alarmed. I wore my face mask and, you know, didn't lick doorknobs or whatever. But the most important information that got to me via word of mouth, whatever, and this is me never checking the news, right, is the vaccine was available. So I was in the Providence, Rhode Island at the moment. I got the Moderna first shot and the second shot pretty early, and I'm pretty happy because I didn't read all this stupid like. And also, if you're too into the news, then you kind of like sooner or later people get into like this weird like, like first it kind of disguises itself as libertarianism, and then it quickly devolves into conspiracy theory. So the was it Bill Gates' plan to control the world, or was it Fauci, whatever his name is, like, he has all these like $1 billion he's making from the vaccine, whatever. And the funny thing is, I think people give too much credit to these individuals as thinking of them as these like maniacal overminds. Honestly, I don't think they're smart enough. Like, Bill Gates isn't smart enough to put 5G chips into everyone's brain or whatnot. And the reason why also people like conspiracy theories so much is that people who don't feel like they're in control of their lives or have some sort of suffering, hidden ailment in the back of their minds, they always kind of want a scapegoat, whether it be a conspiracy theory or whatever. And then my ultimate takeaway was, even if all the conspiracy theories you believed in were true, does it really matter, and does it really influence your personal life that much? And yeah, I don't really think so. And so, even with when it comes to investments and cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, whatever, to not check your investments like every other second, or even on the daily level, or even on the weekly level, or even at the monthly level, I think takes more courage. So whenever people are, oh, you want to know the news about X, Y, and Z, certainly I'm very curious, but I'm like, no, don't tell me. I want to keep my ears closed. So also with good is tricky too, because on the flip side, I guess this might be more of a stoic thing, where you also kind of don't want to hear good news. Then you become too overly eager of the good news, which also puts you in a bad position. Now, it's kind of tricky because one thing that Nietzsche said was the downside of Stoicism is that if you clip your upside, if you try to make yourself too unemotional, whatever, you also clip your upside for joy, which is like an interesting theory, right? So like, if you try not to overindulge in good news, you might just get less out of life, is the theory. But similarly speaking, my thought is, if you live in uncertain times, being a Stoic is better. Even Nietzsche says this, right? Like, if you're living in a time of turmoil and war, Stoicism wiser. If you're living in time of relative peace, being an Epicurean is a better, like the walled garden of Epicurus. And also that's why ultimately Cindy and I named our son Seneca, named him our kid Seneca, because, being born as a pandemic baby and moving forward, the thought was life will be pretty uncertain. So how can you thrive in the midst of uncertainty is the general gist. But anyways, so taking it back to ignorance. So now lately I've also been spending a lot of time visiting bookstores. And it's so funny because like, the bias is the more you read, the more intelligent you become and the more virtuous you become. But in actuality, 99.999% of the books there are actually not good. They're not worth reading. Even looking at these old kind of like 90s, 2000s books, none of them actually have stood the test of time. The only books I've seen in the bookstore, which are actually good, I think, are the parody humor funny books. Saw books like Skeletor's Guide to Self-Help, which I thought was pretty hilarious. And also just the classics like the Iliad by Homer. Oh, the essays of Montaigne, some of the philosophy books, and that's pretty much it. So, and also realize the problem is that news is toxic. Too much information is actually toxic for you too. It's like and you yourself having to be the mental sifter and the filter of all this information is also exhausting. It's so interesting. People are like, oh, just read more books, right? Reading a lot of books for the sake of reading books, it's like eating a lot of like McDonald's hamburgers. Probably not good for you. But anyways, the ultimate takeaway is this: try to remain more ignorant of others, global affairs, whatever, and strive to become more knowledge about what you're interested yourself and your own limits.